Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Guitar Live. And I want to welcome back my co-host, Ami Fields. She's with us here
Hey
today.
guys.
We finally figured out the technology, how to get two people on here who aren't in the same room. So she's speaking to you from out of Mongolia. No, where are you?
I'm just in Oakland, here in the
She's
Bay Area.
outside. At least she's outside here in the Bay Area, but not in the room with me.
Yeah.
So, for those of you who are new to Real Guitar Live, welcome. It's great to have you here. Those of you who are watching this as a recording, I'm going to be answering a lot of questions, but when it's when it's recorded, you'll have comments underneath. Feel free to add questions there. I always read the questions, every single one. So if you ask me a question in the comments on YouTube, I will get back there and acknowledge it and answer you. So for today, I'm going to start with people who have pre-submitted questions, and then I'm going to go on and answer questions to people who are live in the chat. And I welcome Mark. Good to see you, Ray. Yes, and Tim. Glad to see everybody here. Michael, from California. Hi, Michael. We're going to Amin's going to read off the questions for me, and that way I can kind of focus on thinking about my best answer. If you ask a question in the chat, it helps if you put the big words "question" in front. Now, Ami can concentrate a little better than I can on the chat, and she can see better too. So it might not be as critical, but it'll help her out. Okay, with that said, I'm going to answer questions, and then we're going to do a drawing these are for students of my Real Guitar Success membership. Every month we do a drawing. They complete 20 practice sessions, one per day during the week. And once they completed it, they're entered in the drawing, and they are open to winning a $50 gift card. Of course, the big prize is they've gotten that much better at guitar and hopefully had a good time, not without some struggle, but a good time doing it. So, that said, I'll go ahead and start off with the first question. Oh, I got to keep my earphone in because otherwise I can't hear Ami, what she's saying. There we go.
All right.
Okay, that's good. We got it. We got this. This is new for me.
Let's do
I
this.
might have to readjust them a few times. It seems to be working. Okay, Ami, let's go ahead and start with the first question, the pre-submitted question.
All right, let's jump in. And also special hi to Mark. I see your comment. Hi. It's good to be back, everybody. All right. So this question is from Shulamit. Shulamit says, I understand that there are three types of pickups for acoustic guitars. One, can a pickup that I buy separately and attached to the guitar be used instead of buying a guitar that comes with one installed by the factory, so like an acoustic electric? Will the sound be comparable? And then two, of the three types, which do you recommend?
Oh, great question. I haven't had this question before. And it's something I've had a lot of experience with. Ever since I've been playing my own original style of music, I've played acoustic guitar, both a nylon string and sometimes steel string, but mostly a nylon. And I've had to put pickups in many guitars. Yes is the first answer. If you put a pickup in the guitar properly, it'll sound as good as if it was built into the guitar. Now, when I say properly, for me, that means a repairman actually installing it in the guitar, making it so that you can plug it into the backside. But more importantly, putting it, usually they put the pickup underneath the saddle here. And now going to the three types of pickups, a separate pickup, in other words, two pickups, a microphone underneath the bridge, the face of the guitar. Soundboard, that's the word I was looking for. This is a soundboard. Now, it's not as simple as just throwing it in there. See, what a good repairman does, he moves it around until he finds the place that gives you the best sound. And on this part here, if you don't adjust it just right, one string sounds louder than the other. And I've had this happen. Mm-hmm. Even with a repairman, we've had to do some tweaking. So not as simple as just slapping a pickup on and expect it to sound as good as if somebody really did it right. That said, you can still get a decent sound if you slap a pickup on, and particularly the type of pickup that just picks up vibrations on the guitar. It's not as critical. It's not going to be as good of a sound, but it might suffice for your purposes. Now, the three types of pickup. Basically, there's a microphone, and the microphone is usually installed inside your guitar somewhere pointing towards the sound hole. But there is also a microphone that you can install outside of your guitar. It clips on here, and then kind of a little teeny microphone points back at the sound hole. I've never used that one, but I've had friends who use that, co-guitar players when I perform. And microphones inevitably have the problem of feedback. So even inside the guitar, you're going to have a harder time getting a louder volume with a microphone than the other two pickups. The other two pickups are piezoelectric. This picks up vibrations, and it can be installed under the soundboard or on top. They make some that you can just basically stick on with like a little gummy thing on the top of your guitar. It's really easy, and you can take it off, and usually doesn't damage your guitar, so you can put it on and take it off. Doesn't sound as good to me, but it's very convenient that way. And then finally, there's one called an electromagnetic. It's similar to the type of pickup you see on an electric guitar. It's what it's doing. It has magnets, and the strings vibrate. It only works, by the way, for metal strings. It wouldn't work for nylon because it's picking up the vibration of the metal, and it basically takes that and interprets it into sound and goes through your amplifier. Usually, I've always seen them put right in the middle of the sound hole like this. You see them very clearly. And you can often see the 6 little poles. Sometimes they have a covering over that, but a lot of them you'll see 6 little dots. Those are one for each string. You got to get lined up to each string properly. That's the key there. It sounds more like an electric guitar to me. And of course, I've never used that. So, because I don't care for that sound. If I want electric guitar, I'll play electric guitar. Right. But some people, it works really well. It depends on the style of music that you're playing. There is no best and less best. Depends on your circumstance and the style of music that you're playing and what you're looking for. To some degree, taste too. For me, the best pickup is a combination of that microphone inside the guitar and a type of piezoelectric that is thin and fits under the entire bridge of your guitar, or this saddle. That's it. That's the right word. Saddle. Wow, got it. I didn't have to think too long. Saddle, and getting it so that it's adjusted pressure wise so the strings are all even. Then I mix them. I blend the two sounds. The microphone sounds more realistic in a lot of ways. Tends to accentuate the low end a bit, and feeds back easy. So I'll back off the microphone so I can get louder without feeding back, and then I'll add more of this, which adds a little crispness to it, and I can get a little louder before feedback. All said and done, I still prefer the sound of a good microphone in front of my guitar. That's the most realistic, angled just properly, but you got to deal with feedback. And it's a particular problem when you're playing with a band. When I'm recording, it's not an issue. Recording, I don't use pickups, period, ever. Some people do, so I'm not saying that's not a thing, but I want the best sound of the real guitar, and I'm going to use 1 or 2 microphones. Okay, I think I did that one fairly well.
Yeah.
What's next?
You couldn't help that plug there, the real guitar. I heard
that.
You want to hear
real
the
guitar.
Real guitar.
That was an accident. Just
I
my
know.
earphones. Okay. Oh, good. Okay. I can hear a
So the
little
next
better.
one is from Pierre. So Pierre says, when playing a B major bar chord, the A shaped form, I know that ideally you need the high E string. Is it also true when moving it up a half step to play the C major chord? Should I also mute the high E string?
There we go. I wanted to see my guitar for this one. He's talking about this form. And so you can play it this way too. And so he's asking, first of all, he's saying you should mute the high E. Okay, no, you don't need to mute the high E. The high E is a part of the note, the chord. Now, if it doesn't sound good buzzing, it's better to mute it than to have it buzzing. But I don't mute it. It is slightly muted when I do it this way. When I do it this way, I don't mute it. Yeah. So yeah, it's a subtle difference, but you don't have to mute it. If you're muting it, better than, again, buzzing. So that's okay. If you're muting it, you probably wouldn't even notice the missing note. It's very subtle. Going up a step to C, yes, everything's the same. If you're muting it, keep muting it. If you're not muting it, don't mute it. It's still a good note. There, you can hear it. If you go up to D, it doesn't matter. It's that form of the chord. It has nothing to do with where you're playing the chord or what B, C, D, E, F, G. It's part of that form, chord form. Mm-hmm. So I think that pretty well answers that question, huh?
Yeah, totally. The next one is from Ryan. So Ryan has a quick little background story I was going to share with you guys. So Ryan says, I liked what I was reading and how you structured your learning process. It isn't about playing other artists' songs, not that I don't appreciate their creativity. I want to learn so I can express myself musically, and your approach really appeals to me. I'm 57 years old and just started about 2 months ago, practicing every day, no exceptions. My question is, how do I get my pinky finger on my fretting hand to stop following the ring finger? Is there some exercise I can do? I've been practicing spider walks, and that's helpful, but it's painstakingly slow.
The pinky. The infamous pinky. So I hear all kinds of problems with the pinky. Mostly, I can't get the pinky to press with enough pressure because it's weak. And then following the third finger and just generally collapsing when I'm trying to play. Mm-hmm. The thing is, okay, let me think of a way to say this. You need to train your pinky. Both strengthen it, but in your case, you need to train it to basically the signal from your brain to go to your pinky and to act independently from your other fingers. And you do that by playing very simple exercises. Simple in the sense of you're not having to be creative or think of new things constantly. That's why there's all these many simple exercises like this. So that's a simple, somewhat chromatic exercise, one fret at a time. So what I'm doing in this exercise is playing something that I've memorized. I'm not having to think about what note am I going to play and that kind of stuff. I'm just concentrating on getting each finger right. So it depends on where you're at. I would start with doing this exercise every day. And that's the thing. That's the thing I see students mostly have problems with. They think I did it 5 times. It should be fine now. It's not working. I need something else. No, you're going to need to do it about 282 times, something like that.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, another 282 times. Most students, and me included, and when I say most students, really, I'm talking about myself as well, underestimate how many times you have to repeat something to really get it and how long it takes to train your brain. But also, I think that students underestimate how this little at a time over time, how big of a difference it makes. People doing stuff like this, it's just a bunch of little actions over and over for a long period of time that kept building one on the other. And it's amazing of what those little things can do. But you don't see it in the short term, so it's kind of deceiving. Now, I started there because I don't know your level exactly. I get a sense, you know, 2 months, you're pretty much a beginner. Matter of fact, you're a brand newbie, I would say, at 2 months. So start here. But there are other exercises. A step up, which I wouldn't go there, but I just want you to look ahead. It's something like this one I call a spider. It's the same thing, but now you keep the other fingers down as you move one finger over. It takes more coordination to keep the other fingers where they are. And you can see this really is training all the fingers to act independently because they each have to move one and the other ones stay where they are. So that's the next level. But you got to start where you're at. Oh, I got to work on these earphone things. You got to start with a basic warm-up exercise. Every day, I don't mean to exaggerate, but every day, 5-6 days a week, you start with this warm-up exercise for months. And then you move on to the spider thing. And you don't worry about how fast you're going as much as you're getting it right. It's working little at a time. Try not to worry of, is it better than yesterday? Because it's not that way. It's over time. It's going to keep getting better and better. Plus, it warms up your fingers and gets you ready for your practice. And I hope you are practicing a little bit, at least every day. It's that kind of thing. Keep coming back, chipping away at it. Let's go on to the next question, because I realize that the next question is kind of connected, and there's a few questions that'll keep. If you're watching this, Ryan, either pre-recorded or live, I'm going to be adding to that as we go on. So here we go.
Definitely. And before we jump into the next one, Thomas, I just wanted to acknowledge the folks that have left questions in the comments. I have seen them. So Freddie and Chris, I got your questions here. And we will get to those in just a bit after we get through some more of the pre-submitted ones. All righty. So the next one is from Rod.
I have a question. How the heck do you get these earbuds to stay in your ear? If anybody knows, let Ami know. She'll tell me.
All right. So Rod says, it seems not as productive to practice individual skills like hammer-on scales, finger-picking patterns, chord changes, etc. Why not find a song or songs you like, which has a skill or multiple skills you want to achieve, and practice the skill whilst learning the song?
Boy, Rod, first of all, yes, exactly what you're saying. It seems like it would be more productive to just play stuff that sounds good and includes the techniques and things that you need to work on. And you're parroting exactly the way I thought when I first started playing guitar. And I've learned somewhat the hard way, but also somewhat through my students of seeing what results I get. And I've been doing this 40 years, so I still remember. I can remember a lot of my starting out and the struggles I went through. It seems like you would be able to get these skills through playing songs or different songs in combination. But it is I will say this way first. It is so inefficient, it's likely to just fail. Now, not always, but see, here's the thing. When you play through a song, and let's say you're working on hammer-ons, and it has a few hammer-ons in the song. Let's say it's a 3 or 4 minute song. But now, most lead guitar is not 3 or 4 minutes. So let's say it's 3 minutes long. You've played the hammer-on maybe 5 times in a 3-minute song. All of what you could have probably done in 10 seconds. So if you did an exercise that worked on that hammer-on and played it 30 times, that would be 3 minutes. But instead, you played it each hammer-on once each in 3 minutes. Now, if you multiply that out, you practice for half an hour, 10 times, you could have practiced that hammer-on 10 times 30. You only practiced it 10 times, each hammer-on in that 10-second gap. It takes you forever to get good at hammer-ons that way. You're playing it in a song or songs. And it doesn't matter if you play 8 hours a day, because you could have played the hammer-ons an exercise for half an hour and got the same benefit or more. Because the thing is, too, when you're doing an exercise, you got time to slow down, see what you did wrong, go back and do it again and correct it. When you're playing a song, there's too much going on. You can't remember. I mean, usually when I'm playing a song, if I didn't quite get it right, I still just keep going. I don't stop and try to figure out what's wrong here and go back over it. I just keep going. I'm trying to finish the song, then go back over. I can't process all that when I get to the hammer-on again to get it exactly right. Now, I've been in that situation when I'm playing live and I'm going to play that same lick and I just kind of fumbled it and I'm coming back around to play it again. It's kind of stressing. I'm thinking, well, do I remember what I did wrong and am I going to be ready? Well, that's live. You got to kind of deal with that sometimes. But then I go home and pull out an exercise and practice that technique, concentrate, focus on it, get it right. See what I did wrong, slow it down, speed it up, then put it back in the song and see how I did. Much more efficient. I'm not talking twice, 3 times, 100 times more efficient. Playing songs in general is a slow road to getting good at guitar. But you do need to play songs for 2 reasons. It's fun, of course. And that's what you want to play guitar for. And you need to take all these techniques and put them together in context of a song too. But that's a part of practice, not all of practice. Basically, 2/3 of your practice should be exercises and try to improve the techniques and then applying them to songs. And that's a very rough thing. If I'm playing live or going to a performance, I'm going to practice my songs and make sure I know them and some exercises to correct some things I'm doing wrong. If I'm working on trying to improve some specific techniques, I'm going to spend maybe my whole practice session on exercises. Forget songs. Just focus on this technique for a week or 2 until I get it and then start filtering it into songs. So Hope that helps, Rod. And that applies to all areas of playing guitar: hammer-on, scales, melodies, chords. I would, if I'm just learning chords, I wouldn't just play them in a song. That's so slow. And you're very likely to slow down, speed up, depending on when you're changing chords. I would practice a very focused exercise on changing the chords that I'm having a problem with, and then add them to a song. Then go back and try the exercise again if it's not quite working, and then play the song again. You can tell I have some energy around that.
Just a little bit. Totally.
A lot of it is because I feel like I wasted a lot of time early on. I could have progressed much faster.
Sure. And I can second that as a teacher too. I'm totally in that same camp of agreeing and understanding that there are those practice sessions where it's like, yeah, today you're not going to actually get to a song. Today we're just going to work on this skill. It's just kind of the way it works. Okay. So we have Terry. Terry says, I'm learning the blues pentatonic scales in all the positions. What else do I need to learn to play lead guitar more efficiently?
Terry, great question. Improvising for me is really a big part of playing guitar. Funny enough, when I first started playing guitar, I never thought I'd be able to improvise. But now I think it's one of the most fun things, that and actually creating songs for me. The thing is, learning blues position, all the scales, is not the most efficient way to learn to improvise. I'm not saying don't do it, but I would put your energy more on learning one position and maybe two, but start with one and then actually applying it to improvising. The best thing you can do is to take backing tracks or make your own and take one position on the scale and work at it every day to try to improve what you're getting. You might even want to, at some point, not necessarily right from the beginning, record what you're playing, listen back and say, I like that, I didn't like that, let me try again. Improvising is a lot more than just playing scales. And there are a lot of people who can play scales up and down the neck that sound terrible improvising. It's much better to actually practice improvising so that you're learning phrasing, rhythm, timing. I mean, sometimes just one note is all you need that expresses a thought. Look at Santana. You can tell he's not just playing scales. I mean, he knows when to play the right note and milk it for all it's worth. But it works. It tugs at people's heartstrings, the way he does it at the right place at the right time and the right rhythm and all that. And you won't get that by playing scales. It just doesn't work. Blues scale is a good one to start with, or I call pentatonic. Blues scale is pretty much either synonymous or you're adding a note, and it's they'll call the blues note. I assume you mean pentatonic, but if not, it's not too important. I hope that helps, Terry. The best thing I can suggest to you is every day, if you want to improvise, make some part of your practice session just playing along with backing tracks. Start with the one blues scale, maybe add another position, try another backing track to kind of move you into a different rhythm, maybe then add a third position, that kind of thing. Make sure you can, move around, something like that.
Thomas, can I add a couple of cents in on that one?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I was totally terrified to improvise. Like it has always been a scary thing to me. And I think part of it comes from feeling scared that I'm going to get it wrong, that I'm going to play it wrong, that the note isn't going to sound right. And I remember distinctly the moment when I decided, like, no, I think I can actually do this. And what I used to do when I first started improvising is I would just choose a couple notes. And at the time, I wasn't even practicing scales, so you're already like a step ahead of me. But like, I was just going from a point where I was like, I'm going to just try some notes and hear how it sounds. And I would play and do a bunch of different sounds and stuff. And then I'd be like, okay, I know that this note does not work with this chord. Okay, so take that note out. Now choose a different note to replace it. And I just tried stuff around, particularly using my ear, and you just tried stuff. And then I would choose maybe 4 notes. And like, I'm going to make a whole solo out of these 4 notes. I'm going to go back and forth, try different combinations, try different intervals, try different rhythms. And so I started to feel more and more comfortable doing that. And then all of a sudden, it was like not only working on an ear training level for me, but then I was like, oh, now that I'm working on these scales, I can see how these also fit in. So now when I improvise, I'm just like, oh, I got it. And even when I don't, I use my ear, and if it sounds wrong, then I play the wrong note again, so I make it sound like it's on purpose.
In some respect, I envy is too strong a word, but I think Ami actually has a more natural approach to music than I did when I started, and I think actually you're more of a natural musician. I went about it from a head place of figuring out the scales and notes that fit with the song or the chords, and then trying to make them fit. And it sounded like that. It sounded like I was calculating and thinking, and whereas I think actually your approach of just playing a few notes and seeing what works, and adding a few notes, is actually would get me faster to where I am now, which I hear in my head with notes I'm playing. I'm not thinking what scale I'm going to play as much. I might start there, but I have to get out of it before anything sounds like music. I have to get out of my head.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by I think I want to say it was Miles Davis or Louis Armstrong. One of the jazz greats said, learn all the theory, learn all the scales, and then forget it. You don't necessarily want.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
You don't want to take all of these technical and logistical things, because then you lose the soul of the music, right? The whole point of music is to feel it, to experience it, and I definitely take music from a natural approach. I mean, I faked being able to read music for a long time, and you never really practiced it. Always came natural, but I think that's just how I was raised with music. My grandmother was an amazing pianist, couldn't read music at all. And so there is a sense of balance there, especially when it comes to improvising, where you just have to let it go. And even just like I said, start with 2 or 3 notes, and then just try bouncing back and forth between those 2 or 3 notes. And there are some really, really amazing solos that use literally 2 or 3 notes. You can use those same notes and jump the octave, right? So there's just all different kinds of ideas. If you just kind of let down your guard a little bit, you got the scales, let it go. Now just try playing around with it. Cool.
Good. Okay.
All right. Next question we have is from Bob. And by the way, the folks that are live, keep submitting those questions. I'm getting those. Thank you guys for that. We'll get there in just a minute. So Bob says, when I play the C add 9 or the G chord, my left ring finger and my pinky bend the wrong way or backwards on the 3rd fret, 1st and 2nd string. I know they should arch like the first 2 fingers. Can you recommend any exercises to help overcome that?
So I'm trying to do what you're describing, Bob. That's why I went to
Thomas,
my guitar.
can we see you real quick? Can you switch the camera?
Sorry. I have to.
No worries.
I appreciate the reminder. I have to take. There. I had you on solo. There we go. So here's what I think Bob is doing. Something like that. That's really hard. Bob, you're very creative. But you're right. I know Bob also mentioned that another guitar player who told him, you got to fix that, and I agree. First of all, generally speaking, it's to have that habit, and it is a habit. I would have preferred you stuck with simpler chords. Let's put it this way. I assume you're playing the D like this, up and then down. If you flatten your fingers out, it's really hard to play a chord efficiently. For one thing, because you don't have any leverage, so it's hard to put enough tension without really straining yourself. The other thing, you're going to touch other strings. So you want to develop the habit of your fingers coming up and down, and apply that habit to the C and the G chords with your pinky. Maybe your pinky needs some help, in which case I would practice an exercise that uses your pinky. I use this exercise a lot, and because you've been playing a while, Bob, I'm going to mention this to you. It's a pinky strengthener. It's also for hammer-ons. So I'm just going up chromatically, and see, I'm hitting 3 times with my pinky. Now that's not going to make a sound if I flatten my pinky out. Well, I can really slam it, but really I need very little pressure and just a little 1/8 of an inch above the string to make that note if I bend my finger. So I would back up and practice either an exercise like that, or I don't know how much you're practicing warm-ups, but if you're not, start with this one. It just causes you to use your pinky. Now, again, the spider will also accentuate this, because the spider is where you play the same exercise, right? Only you leave your fingers down. Now watch this. I move my first finger over, second finger, third, but the other fingers have to stay there. If I don't curve them enough, as soon as I move my finger over, it deadens out the string. So you have to, it forces you to curve. Practice it every day. One of these exercises, and you can go in order. Start with the simplest if you need to. But if you've been doing this for years, maybe you could try adding, going to the spider or this hammer-on thing. Either way, you need to get the habit of curling your fingers and going straight down on the note. Whether it's the C chord, the G chord, the D chord, it should apply to all the chords. You have a habit now that you're going to have to break a little, so be patient with yourself. Anything you
Definitely.
have to add, Ami?
No, I would agree, and I would say the same thing applies for uke players out there too. It's a little different just because we don't have as big of a stretch, right? Like the frets are way closer together, but it's the same kind of thing. Finger independence is a serious thing. And I also recommend some stretches and some other hand exercises you can do to kind of like help get that pinky a little bit stronger and a little bit more independent, which goes back to, I think, what Ryan said or another person that submitted a question. So, just things like this, like a big one that I have my students do is you put your fingers like this, palms together, raise your thumbs, put them together, pointer fingers, put them together, middle fingers, put them together, ring, put them together, and pinky, put them together. Because if you're having some finger independent thing, like being able to go back and forth like this can be pretty tricky. So it's always a good place to start too. That's like a good TV time activity when you're just chilling out. And I did just want to mention before I go to the next question, somebody had put in on the chat asking where they put questions. Where you put your question is exactly where it needs to be. Just leave it as a comment. And after we get through the pre-submitted questions, we'll be glad to hit through those. Okay, so the next one is from Abigail. Abigail says, what is the best brand of guitar and or guitar strings?
I'm going to throw that one your way.
Oh, okay. Whatever you like best. So I
say whatever brand you have.
Yeah,
it's better than one you wish you had.
There you go. I am personally, when it comes to instruments, I'm not particularly a gearhead or somebody that's really too picky about the name that's on there. I think it's about the fit and the kind of instrument. I think it's also incredibly important, even while learning, to get something that's actually going to help you in your learning. So you don't want to be worried about like your action or how far your strings are from the fretboard, and other things like your guitar falling apart, strings popping off while you're trying to learn. It just is not a conducive thing to do. I can tell you what we sell best in our retail store, and the brand that I tend to back the most, just because I think it's a good bang for your buck, is Yamaha guitar. There are so many different kinds, and what I like best about Yamaha is that there's a big range. So if you're trying to spend $150 on a guitar, you can get a decent Yamaha that's going to last you a long time. You're trying to spend in the hundreds, closer to the thousands. They also have some seriously great high-end guitars. There are all different brands out there. It also depends on the kind of guitar you want. So if you're looking more electric, looking more acoustic, there are different things to consider. If you're looking electric, one of my favorite brands is Fender. I just think they have really good guitars. They're kind of a classic. So that's where I'd start there. Your local shop should be able to help you find something that works for what you need. I think it's also important to get a good guitar for what you're looking to do. So if you're trying to play classical and Spanish guitar, don't get you a big old dreadnought steel string. That ain't going to help you. So you want to make sure that you're finding the brand and the type of guitar that helps. Like I said, any local guitar shop should be able to help work with you to find what you need. When it comes to strings, there's a lot to consider. Size is, of course, one of the biggest things. And by size, I mean the gauge or how thick the string is. It greatly affects how you play. If you have strings that are too thin or too thick, they'll either cut you because they're thin like wire, or too thick, it can hurt just because you don't have the finger strength yet. So I typically recommend folks start with light strings, sometimes extra light. The sound, it really depends. Again, I think what sells best in our store and what I tend to like, even off my ukulele, are Diodario strings. Some people call them D'Addario, but I call them Diodario. I think that they just make a good string. I like their acoustic strings in particular. Phosphor Bronze is one of my favorite kinds, just because it has a deeper, more balanced, fuller sound. If you're looking for a steel string, they have the Pro Arte nylon strings, which are really cool, and they have a whole bunch of different like kinds of strings under that category. So that's probably what I would do. So I personally like Yamaha guitars with Diodario strings. Do you have any other insight on that, Thomas?
Oh, I'm going to take you off solo. There we go.
There we go.
I use almost always Diodaria strings. I've been through a number of different strings. And it's not that I think they're better than all the others. It's just I know Diodarias are very consistent and they use good packaging so they stay fresh longer. I also know that there's not as many strings as it would appear on the market. There are only so many, I think only 3 major manufacturers of the raw materials, the actual string itself. And then all the string companies buy those materials. So all the plain strings are pretty much coming from one of those 3 companies. They're all pretty equal. Then the wound strings depends on their machines. D'Addario has very high-tech, good machines. I know, too, there are some people that swear by one brand or another. Same with guitars. I have a friend that if it's not a Fender, it's not a real guitar. And then another friend, it says, no, it's got to be a Gibson. It's not, I'm a Gibson man. Okay, power to you. But I'd say for students in general, Yamaha is a good bang for buck. And there are others. I think Fender acoustics and electrics are good bang for buck. And they're in that price range, they can't be terribly different or they would go out of business. So they have to compete in the marketplace. So if you're spending $200-300, the major brands are going to be in quality somewhere pretty well equal. And anything after that is probably mostly opinion. But that's my opinion.
Oh, there we go. Totally. I agree. Okay. And we have a couple more submitted questions, and I'm going to keep repeating. You guys keep submitting your questions online for those of you who are just now joining us. Just write question and leave it in the chat, and we'll be glad to get to those in just a few minutes. Next question is pre-submitted. I don't know how to pronounce your name, so I'm going to say Jaime. It's Jaume. Apologies for mispronunciation. I've been playing guitar for about 2 years. I still have problems with playing fast, in particular scales. Is there any good exercises to increase your speed?
No, I also know that, and I'm not sure how to pronounce your name either, Jaime. I'll try that, but feel free to correct me, or if any way you can let us know how to say your name properly. I'd love to get it right. I know he's playing with his fingers, he said. So this is something, playing melody notes fast is something I've worked at for years. And I still don't feel like I'm very fast. But I'm comparing myself to very accomplished flamenco guitar players. I almost said flamenco. We have a mutual friend that plays in a band called flamenco. Flamenco and metal mixed together. I'm talking flamenco where they're playing, and I'm not there. I don't think I'll ever get there at this point, but I think I can improve if I keep practicing. Mm-hmm. There is no one perfect exercise, but I would first of all recommend that you start with basic scale exercises and develop a routine of practicing every day, sometimes with a metronome, sometimes not, but track your progress with the metronome just to see how you're doing. And plan on it taking months and months. If you want to improve your speed, you have to be careful not to tense up too much. So you want to go faster and then go slower and relax and then try and push up again and keep moving up step by step. There is no one. I took a course one time on how to get faster with the fingers, and they just gave me like a dozen exercises. No one exercise was the exercise. One of them was this chromatic thing. By the way,
Thomas, would you mind doing that really quickly with a different camera view, just so we can see that?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, I normally do that on a nylon string guitar because that's when I use my fingers for playing melody. That's what I'm doing. I'm using a nylon. When I play a steel string, I usually use a pick. And I'll practice a similar exercise with a pick going, see how fast I can go. And keep pushing it. I track my progress. I'll do it for a period of time, maybe a month, and then I'll stop, and I'll come back again later, a few months later, and try to push my speed up again. When you're playing with your fingers, if you're playing melodies, you're just going to use these two fingers. I wouldn't try adding this third, though there are a few flamencos that are able to do that. But that's a more difficult technique, and I've never used the third finger for melodies, just these two. And you're practicing going back and forth. I would also add to, if I were you, I would start with just the basic scale, this major scale. And it does depend on the style. And track your progress and try playing just parts of the scale and see how fast you can go. That's one octave. And then add it back into the whole scale. The thing is, you want to do speed bursts, is what I call them, where you're practicing just a few notes and see how fast you can go. But you can't necessarily apply that to a whole scale because there's other movements involved. So you keep going back and forth. And you need to go slower and make sure you're doing it right. One of the biggest problems I see with people trying to play fast is they push going faster at the same time getting sloppier. And those habits are hard to break and actually ends up holding them back in the long run. So you want to go in slow increments and over time so that you don't develop bad habits that you have to break later. And you want to keep this even as well. Stay relaxed. You get tense, slow down a little bit, relax, try again. Keep coming back. It's a process. There's no magic trick. At least I haven't found it, and I've been looking for a long time. Keep in mind that I want to say this. I'm clear that some people are more genetically disposed to be able to play fast things. But genetics is only a small part of it, and I wouldn't use that as an excuse to hold you back. I'm clear, though, that I don't have the same genes as Paco de Lucia, who's a famous flamenco guitar player. And I'm never, probably with all the practice I could do, 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, I'll never be as quick as Paco de Lucia or people like him.
Right. Okay. This next set of questions, really great, are from Shulamit. So we have just a couple of questions from her. And then I do have quite a few folks with questions that are live. So we'll get to all of your questions live in just a few moments after we get through these last few pre-submitted ones, okay? So these next few excellent ones are from Shulamit. So first one, when playing lead guitar, like improvising over a backing track, how important is speed? You kind of already talked about that a little. It seems like it's an element that is stressed greatly, but to tell the truth, I don't have that type of coordination despite that I practice a lot. When I play, put the emphasis on rhythm, and to me, it sounds good. Is there some law that says only speedy guitar players are worth anything?
Well, we'd have to involve a lawyer to be sure, but I don't think there's a law. And at least not in the U.S. I know you're in Israel, Shulamit, so I can't speak for their law system. But no, I think in a way, you kind of answered your own question. I mean, what sounds good to you is good, and fast, I don't. Truth is, I get caught up in wanting to play fast and compare myself to fast guitar players, but I know I'm just banging my head against a wall for no good reason. Really, what I enjoy when I listen is the right notes at the right time that evoke some emotion, and it's not a bunch of fast runs. It's cool once in a while, but not only do I think it's necessary as a goal, I think it's self-defeating.
Yeah.
It's better to play good music that sounds good. And if you want to speed up and play easier, practice some exercises to improve your speed, but don't make that your whole focus on playing guitar. Matter of fact,
Totally.
it should be a very small portion. I'm all for making it easier, to be able to get to the notes easier and more fluidly. But just speed to show off speed doesn't seem like it's going to get you anywhere you want to be.
Yeah, I agree. So Shulamit's second question, and thank you, Shulamit, for that. By the way, she also submitted it on the live chat, so we got you there. A friend came to me and said that she wants to learn to play guitar, wants me to come with her to the guitar shop and help her pick one out. She has around $300 to spend on it, but the guitar shop that I use, the proprietor is also a guitar repairman and doesn't sell a guitar until he's given it a setup. What other specifications should I check out to advise her what guitar to buy? My
first thought is I would trust the proprietor. I would ask his opinion and say, here's what I want, and can you direct me through that? The biggest thing I would say about guitar is make sure it is set up right. You can get a $200 guitar set up properly that plays much better than a $2,000 guitar that's not set up properly.
Right.
Though when you pay $2,000 or $3,000, they tend to set them up before they'll sell them to you, and less so with $200 and $300 guitars. But if the proprietor is going to set up the $300 guitar, I would trust his judgment on that. And again, the brand is mostly, I wouldn't worry about that because the proprietor has certain brands and he's chosen them for a reason, and he feels good about those brands. I would go with that.
Yeah, I agree. Especially if you're working with somebody that clearly kind of knows what they're doing. I'd say leave it in the hands of the proprietor. As a music teacher, on average, how many repetitions of a particular skill, like learning new chords or chord changes or scales, is needed until muscle memory takes over? 73.
282. I thought I answered that.
Oh. You do it till you get it.
I would say more as a music student myself, I find that more repetitions than I think it's going to take in general. Sometimes a lot more. But it is important to make them the correct repetitions. I tried this, by the way. So I did this for you if you haven't tried this. I tried for months playing scales while watching TV. In other words, I wasn't really paying full attention. It was fun, but I really didn't make progress to speak of with my scales. Then I tried setting the process I talked about where I actually would sit in a space and practice my scales for 25 minutes straight and track progress at the end and just kind of keep track of it. In 1 month, I made 10 times the progress I did by not paying attention and just watching TV. Well, I didn't really make any noticeable progress watching TV, so it wasn't hard to make 10 times the progress. But pay attention and start slow and get it right. Relax, speed up. If you start tensing, go back. Do lots of repetitions, but do them right.
And I also, from the music teacher perspective, so Tom's giving you from the student perspective, I can tell you from a teacher's perspective, everybody learns differently, and I can't stress that enough. For all y'all that are listening out there, please understand that what works for some may not work for others. So for me, myself, when I was trying to work on a cool fingerstyle technique, like a particular pattern that I wanted to do, if I sat there in a quiet room and tried to do it, I could not do it. I could only do it if I was watching TV or listening to somebody or distracting myself. And that's what worked for me at the time. That may not work for you. And so it's important to recognize that you are going to find your own path. You're going to find the things that work for you and that don't work for you. And the not so satisfactory answer to that question, for me at least, Shulamit, is that it depends. Because there are some skills that, like, I didn't have to repeat them very many times at all for it to become muscle memory, and I just got it. And then there are other things that I still can't do to this day after, really spending some serious time, like trying to work through it. So it just depends on exactly what you're doing. But I agree with Thomas, like, take your time, sit with it, and do it properly and correctly. Another thing that helps me and that helps my students at times, like if you're working on a particular set of something, if you're playing through it and you mess up, start it over, right? And then you do it again, you mess up the same part, stop, and just play that particular note or that particular thing. So like if I was doing a fingerstyle pattern and I keep messing up right there, then just stop and go back and forth between those two, because I know that that's where I'm struggling to get to where I need to be. So now I'm just going to sit there for a minute and really watch my fingers and say, okay, now I'm going to add the third one in. So I got boom, boom, bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum. Now I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to sit with this until my hand gets, and then I'm going to go like that and be like, oops, I messed up. Stop, start again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's that same kind of thing of start and stop, and make sure that you're actually like spending the time meticulously going through it. But there's definitely no set number. You just got to work it till it's there.
I like that idea about watching TV and practicing or something else. I practiced reading a book before, too. I read the whole first Harry Potter novel that way. I actually wrote a song from it, too. So I shouldn't. I like the idea of like doing something that you already can do, but like trying to get out of your head and just letting your fingers go. I
Yep.
think that's a legitimate part of practicing that I would go along with. Just not as your only practice.
Yes, definitely not your only practice. Okay, last question from Shulami, and then we're going to get through these live questions. How can I know when I've reached my limits in a particular area? After all, most of us will never be a quote Jimi Hendrix. How do I know when it's time to stop investing energy and time into something that I'll never achieve in this lifetime?
On me, I'll let you field that one.
That's a good question. I'm thinking about it from a teacher's perspective. I've definitely hit moments with a student where we're working on something and we've been working on it for weeks, and I go, this just isn't where they are right now. Doesn't mean they won't ever get it in their lifetime, but this just isn't where they are right now. There are times when it's best to move on. If you've been working on a particular song and you've just been working this thing for a month and you're doing it every single day and you're not making improvement, it's still not making sense, I wouldn't say give up on it. I'd say give it a break. Stop working on that one. Go work on something else. Go back to some scales. Move on to a different song. You're just not there. And it doesn't even have to be a particularly hard song. And I think that's important to acknowledge. Sometimes it's not about the difficulty level of a song, because you may have a song of similar difficulty level that you can play just fine. There's just something about that song that's just not for you in that moment. And so I think that that's important to recognize. And I think deep inside, you actually know what your limits are. There comes a point when you're playing something that you just go like, yeah, this ain't going to work. Like Thomas was able to recognize, like some of those really crazy hard flamenco things, but it's just not going to happen. My body does not move in that way. As you get more comfortable playing guitar, as you get more comfortable learning, you'll find the things that you're just like, yeah, that's just not my thing. That's something that is not where I'm going to focus my energy. And I am absolutely 1,000% the kind of person that would rather invest energy in things that I'm making progress in versus investing a bunch of time and energy into something that's probably not going to come to fruition. So to answer your question directly, how do I know when it's time to stop investing it? When you really sit and realize this is just not where I am, when you've tried it over and over and over, and you've been working on it for weeks and you're seeing no improvement and you still don't get it, just stop. You come back to it another time. You can wait another month. Try it again in the future. That's my 10 cents on that.
I can't think of anything to add to that.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So let's get to some of these live submitted questions. So let me just quickly scroll back and see what y'all are asking. So first one comes from Freddie. Freddie, welcome. Thank you for being here. Freddie says, what are your thoughts on beginners learning new songs? Really, how many songs should I be trying to learn at a time? Is it better to concentrate on just one at a time?
Wow. I would say I would not try and do too many songs at once. And I would say it depends on the style of music, but depending on what songs are in that style, if there's technical problems, I would make sure and balance that with exercises. Mm-hmm. How would you answer that question, Ami?
I would say it depends on the musician, depends on your level, and it sort of just depends on the circumstances. So what I'll do with students sometimes is that if I'm working on, let's say, for Ook, a particular chord progression, I may do 2 different songs with 2 different styles using the same progression or some similar complementary ones, primarily just to work on different styles, right? So I may do like a cool little like jazzy tune and a pop tune. So we're working on 2 different strum techniques. But in that case, it would be like a chord progression that they're familiar with, or maybe even one that they need to work on. I think that learning new songs is important. I think as a teacher, I find it really important to help keep my students motivated. So like if I have a 7 or 8 or 9 or 83-year-old learning a new song, like learning how to play ukulele for the first time, you got to give yourself some songs. Otherwise, it just doesn't feel that fun. So I would start with learning one at a time. And if you're feeling like you're doing your practice session, you're getting through your exercises, they're making sense, you're working through your songs, and you're like, oh, this is cool. I'm getting it. It's going well. Well, then pick up another song. Do more than one at a time. just make sure that you're giving them equal attention. And sometimes I'll do that for more advanced students too, to help them kind of like work on technique in a certain way. So be like, hey, we're going to bounce back and forth between these two different genres so that you get the idea of applying this concept in more than one way. Any other tips on that, Thomas?
I've just had students who try to learn, they brush through a song and they go on to the next one. They have a short attention span. And
Yeah.
I would encourage them to narrow down and try to extend their attention span and get better at something. And part of that was selecting the song. Sometimes they select songs too hard, and then I'd say, yeah, maybe we should try a different song. But for the most part, I think you want to get, if not the song perfect, at least get what you can out of it before you move into another song. And that means, improve your skill level. And if you're trying to, if you're more advanced and you're trying to get a repertoire together, well, then that's a matter of selecting the right songs and, deciding which ones you can do quickly, which ones are going to take longer, and then making enough time to actually work on it until you get your repertoire together.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So the next question comes from someone with the screen name God. They say, question, hey Thomas, can you explain the composition of a chord, and is there a formula behind it?
Yes. So the basic composition of a chord, the definition of a chord is usually 3 notes. And if you're talking about a major chord, you take a note and you go up a certain number of steps musically. And then from there, you go a certain number of steps and you end up with 3 notes that are a chord, a major chord. In the case of a major chord, the exact formula is going from the root note to the next note, 2 full steps. On the guitar, that would be 4 frets. So I'm going to start on C here. C, no, I'm going to do it so you can see me too. So we'll start on the C note, and to get the next note for the chord, I'm going up 2 full steps. And for the third note, I'm going up 1.5 steps. So that's 1, 2, 3 frets. That's a C major chord. Now to hear that, I need to play on 3 different strings. So it's going to be open. So there, that's a C chord. When you see a full C chord like this, we're duplicating some notes. Now there's a formula for a minor chord, for a diminished chord, augmented, and so on. I assume you didn't want me to spend 20 minutes on all the different formulas. But that's the idea. And certainly, I can put a link to a blog post that does talk more about that. If you could put a note there on me, I'll remember to. On the show notes, I'll add a link to a lesson with more on the chord theory.
Great. All right. Let's see. The next question comes from Tim. So Tim says, the spider walk is a great warm-up exercise. Are there exercises that deliver the most bang for the buck for bar chords?
It depends on where you are with bar chords. If you're really new at it and just struggling making bar chords, I would start with doing power chords. There's different types of power chords. You can do it 2 fingers, 3 fingers. I would do a 3-finger power chord and start practicing progressions, common progressions using power chords, because that's going to both train your fingers to make good contact with the notes and to move around. Then also practice an exercise separately of just making the bar and making all the notes sound. Then, third level, put them together. And practice exercise that moves from one chord to another. You start off going from the same form, and then you start adding other forms of chord. So that's a more complicated exercise because you have to change very quickly to a different form of the chord. By the way, Tim, you are a member, I believe, of Real Guitar Success, and I've outlined this system with song examples in the Barre Chords for Everyone course. So that's what you need. Not a quick explanation like this. You just need to follow the steps one at a time and by the time you get through Barre Chords for Everyone course, you will be able to play barre chords. And even though you're not perfect, I never meant any course to get somebody from nothing to perfect. After you do that, you're going to do the practice sessions each month, and I'm going to keep giving you different exercises that have to do with barre chords in those practice sessions. So you're going to get to practice everything you've learned in the Barre Chords for Everyone course.
Right. Perfect.
Over and over and over.
Awesome. Love it. Okay. Lily was live. Lily says, any ideas for someone who is, quote, scared to play around and improvise, very used to being an instruction follower? The instruction is to not be scared. No. I hear you, Lily.
Go ahead, Ami.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to share. So,
and I know she's not alone. I've met many people like that.
Absolutely not. And I am absolutely the same way, which is exactly why I started off the explanation saying I didn't improvise until I was an adult, really. Well, late high school is when I was like, okay, I guess I'll give it a try. And I've been playing music forever and ever. So here's my tip. I would take a backing track or take a song that you like. Personally, when I play with a backing track, even when I'm by myself, I'll sometimes feel a little bit embarrassed because I feel like alone. It's just like I'm playing with this thing and now it's like everyone, i.e. nobody, is listening to me. So I can understand the sentiment. So start with a song that you like, that you're familiar with, that you can like sing along to if you want to, and just play around with your guitar or your uke or whatever you're playing and find a couple notes that sound good in that song. If you're like listening, you're like, okay, those two notes sound good. And now just go back and forth between those two notes and then come up with a little rhythm and just play back and forth between those two notes. Okay, cool. And the next time you practice, maybe find 3 notes that go. Okay, I know that those 3 notes sound good with my song. So now I'm going to, okay, cool. Now I've added something. So then you find those 3 notes and you're like, okay, I have a couple little tricks up my sleeve. So now I'm playing along to the song I like. Add a couple of little like fun things. Whatever it may be, right? Start there and just start by finding notes that sound good with the song you're playing. Or if you want to take a more methodical approach, see if you can find online the music for it, find the chord progressions that you can figure out what scale goes well with it, and choose a couple of notes from that scale to do the same thing if you're not as ear focused as I am. And that's probably where I would start. And then you can kind of slowly wean yourself, go from playing with a song that has lyrics and songs and lots of other sounds with it so that you can kind of hide yourself in there, to then playing it with a backing track. Okay, I know this chord progression, or find the instrumental version of that same song. You can probably find it on YouTube with no lyrics, and then you can play your little piece to it. And that should hopefully start kind of warming you up to the idea of improvising a little bit more. That's just kind of what I would think.
What I would do with students like basic blues improvisation is I'd have them learn a little repertoire of licks, and they practice the licks separately. Then I would give them very small railings. I would say, here's the backing track. Now I just want you to, basically, here's a scale, play any note out of scale, but throw in licks whenever you feel like it. And they already know the licks, so they just kind of mix and match. It doesn't sound like fluid improvisation, but it gets you a lot closer there, and little by little, hopefully, you can get them to loosen up. When I was growing up, what we would do is learn whole solos verbatim, and that was a way of actually not having to take chances, because if you could play it like Led Zeppelin, if you play the exact same notes, okay, it's okay. But it doesn't turn into being able to improvise. I've learned that also. I thought it would. I thought if you play enough other guitar player stuff, pretty soon you'd just be able to move all around. It's not quite that way.
Right. Totally. And I totally forgot about licks. I think, Tom, you have probably a bit more experience teaching improvisation than I do. Because with uke, I don't have too many students that really want to improvise. So I think the idea of learning a couple licks is also a really, really great approach to take. Yeah. Thank you for that question, Lily. And thanks for speaking up for the folks that may feel a little bit scared in the back. I'm with you. All right. The next one that we have is from Ron. Ron says, with chords involving my index finger, my finger naturally goes sideways rather than the tip hitting the fretboard. Is this okay?
I'm not sure I'm getting that. Do you have a visual in your mind, Ami, of what he's describing? Maybe read the question one more time.
Sure. With chords involving my index finger, my finger naturally goes sideways rather than the tip hitting the fretboard. Do you mean like this? Or like that? That's what when someone says sideways, I'm thinking that like they mean
yeah.
That
I was thinking angle. Like turning the hand this way, but yeah, I think you're right.
Oh, but maybe like sideways, like on the side of your finger. If you're here wrong, go ahead and clarify for us. Yeah.
So I will say that when I'm playing a chord, I want to have my fingers go up and down and pretty much even, but you can't do it all the time. That's the ideal, and you do some version of that. So look at this A chord. There's no way I could go up and completely down and make that A chord. I have to turn my hand a little sideways. It works fine. I'm still aiming. I'm not going like this. I'm still aiming for as close as I can get, but still be relaxed. This is relaxed for me. This is not relaxed, trying to do that. This is relaxed. Now, if you're doing that, check your hand position and your arm. Are you relaxed? No. Relax. And that's going to make your hand go more up and down this way. But again, if you're trying to curve your hand this way to compensate, it's probably not going to work either. I'm assuming that may be what you're talking about. If not, hopefully I help somebody else.
Yeah, good. We have another question from Tim. So Tim mentioned, along with the other question about strings, how often should I be changing my strings? I practice about an hour a day every day. That's a good question.
I would change my strings from between 3 and 6 months, considering.
Oh, can we see you, Thomas? Sorry.
Oh, they want to see me again.
There you are.
I would change my strings about every 3 to 6 months. They tend to get dull, and I'm not realizing it. So I would aim at that. You could go longer, and it depends on your tolerance for the sound and, of course, what you're doing. When I'm playing live, I change my strings like if I'm playing regularly, like every week or so. Partly because I'm using them more, but also because I want to sound good in front of an audience. And if I'm recording, even more. I'll change strings like if I'm doing a recording session over time, like every 2 or 3 days, because it's really noticeable, the subtle differences on the recording. But for practicing and playing as a hobby, 3 to 6 months, maybe a year, you could stretch it out. Depends on oil in your hands, too. By the way, if you wipe your strings, they're going to last a little longer after you play. Depending on how much acid you have, everybody's a little different. And if you get good at changing strings, it's not as strenuous as you think. The more you do it, the faster it goes. So it's like one of those habits that takes you an hour or two the first time you do it. After a while, you're 10 minutes, you've got new strings on your guitar.
Totally. And question for you, Thomas, do you use that same sort of time frame for both your steel and nylon string guitars?
Yes, but for different reasons. The steel strings, the acid tends to corrode the metal in my fingers. On the nylon strings, it's the vibrance is gone on the wound strings first. So I'll change my wound strings almost twice as often as my unwound strings on the nylon string guitar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good.
I love
we have a
that.
question.
Yeah, there's a high-end clarity that you lose after your strings sit on there for a while.
Right.
It's really noticeable when I put new strings on.
Totally. Especially with the steel string, I find. Yeah. All right. So Cookie says, I'm a beginner. How do I go from playing chords to playing songs? Because everything I've tried sounds wrong, and it's stopping me from wanting to practice.
Well, know that you're not alone. I mean,
not alone.
Go ahead. I know you deal with this a lot. By the way, I tend to not teach a lot of songs myself because I think exercises are a faster way to get there. And I'm a composer. I like to write my own music. But I know Ami has a lot of students that just say, I want to learn this song, I want to learn this song, I want to learn this song.
Pretty much my life. So, yeah. Okay, so first thing for you, Cookie, is number one, you got to make sure that whatever song you're playing is in line with the chords that you know how to play. I find that students often will get 6 or 7 chords in their belt and they're like, yes, let's do it, Metallica. And I'm like, wait, hold on. Slow down a minute there. We have to go with some chords that you're familiar with. So one thing that I really recommend for my students is get like a basic beginner songbook, actually. And so I teach ukulele, and I have lots of great songbooks that I use for beginners that have, 10, 15, 20 songs that will use chords that you definitely know. So that's a good place to start. Make sure that you're using something of your level. The second thing is what I typically do with my students is something called chord speed builders. And it's a very simple exercise that I'll do. So I'm going to show you how it works. I'm going to use the chords C, F, C, F, and G7. So if you want to play along, you can, or write it down for later, whatever. Okay, so basically I'm going to take, we'll do C, F, G7. Hold on. A minor in there. So C, F, A minor, and then G7. C, F, A minor, G7. Okay, so essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to practice going back and forth between these chords. I'm going to start by playing 4 pulses or 1 bar of each chord in that order. So let's start there. So 1, 2, ready. We start on C. We go 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to go to F. Of course, only play this as fast as you could. A minor. And then I'm going to go to my G7. And then I'll go back and resolve on my C. Okay? But the key is that you can only play that as fast as you can comfortably change chords. If you try and go faster, it ain't going to work. Okay? So now I've gotten it basically 4 times for each chord. Now I'm going to cut that in half, and I'm going to do 2 strums per chord. Again, only go as quickly as you can. The F, A minor, G7, and then end on C. And you work that until you can go a little bit faster. And now I'm going to go 1 strum per chord back to back. And then I'm going to keep doing that until I can go. Okay, I haven't done it in a while, so I'm a little rusty, but you get the idea, right? So when you do those chord speed builders, you're training your fingers how to transition from chord to chord. And I find that to be like the biggest obstacle when making that transition from chord playing to actually playing a song. So those would be my 2 tips. So get your chord speed builders under wraps, make sure that you know how to transition from chord to chord, and then spend some time actually looking at the music that you're doing, make sure you're finding something at the right level.
I will second that. Now that you say that, the biggest problem I've seen with students learning songs is they learn the chords and then they're trying to apply them to a song before they can really transition easily. Now, just because you can transition doesn't mean you can play a song, because there's a lot more going on in the song.
Yeah, exactly.
And you better at least be able to transition at a reasonable pace between the chords without all the other stuff going on before you start doing it with a song. Now, you can bang your head against a wall, but it's a rough way to go.
Yeah. Totally. And that's why I make the statement, like, only play the whole situation as fast as you can change from chord to chord. Because this is what I hear all the time. Okay. There and there. That's not going to help you, right? If you have to go like, then go that slow so that you get that muscle memory of move, right? So just take your time working with that. That would be my tip. And you got this. You're going to be okay. It sounds not so great now, but I promise, take it easy on yourself. Take it slow and start with a simple song. Start with a simple, row your boat. Start with something super simple because it feels good when you play it right. So set yourself up for success. Don't push yourself so hard. Sometimes
simple songs have a bad rap, but it's for a reason that people start with simple songs. It gives you both confidence, and it kind of builds the skills one on top of the other instead of making these huge leaps.
Yeah, totally. So we have a couple other questions. I think we've got one more submitted by Shulamit here. Hey, Shulamit. She says, what's the youngest age that a child can learn to play the ukulele? Soon as they can walk. My daughter's 5 months, and we're going to start next week. No, I'm just kidding. So I have taught kids as young as, really in the classroom setting, as young as 5, but I've taught 4-year-olds just kind of on the fun thing, a couple of chords. You just make sure that that they're old enough to not like try and stick their fingers up in here and get all tangled up and get themselves hurt. That would be my main thing. And every kid is different too. But I would say comfortably, like if I were to set an umbrella age, I'd say 5.
And kids at 5 have short attention span, so you really have to come at it just a little bit at a time, 5 minutes or so. In the private lesson, we'll do like a half an hour lesson. So usually I'll wait till 6 or 7 for private students. That's not a blanket rule because there are some exceptional kids. But for the most part, you don't want to sit them in the room for half an hour and it's really a struggle and they think of it as a pain.
Yeah, and I tell you, Shulamit, the biggest hurdle to overcome with little ones when teaching them any fretted instrument is trying to get them to understand the concept. I understand that your fingers hurt, but you still got to do it. Because it's hard for a 5 or 6-year-old to understand that. And I talk to parents all day, and that's the main thing I tell them when someone comes and says, I want my 5-year-old to learn guitar. I say, okay, but let's talk about this a little bit, because trying to tell someone who's just on the other side of toddlerhood, really just taking steps into childhood, that I know that this physically hurts your body because this does not feel good and it's uncomfortable, but you still have to do it. Their inclination is going to be, well, I don't want to. And also, the sense of instant gratification, right? If I don't press my string hard enough, that's the sound I get. That doesn't sound good to a 5-year-old. So when you're trying to teach them a chord, they're just going to go harder and harder, and it's not sounding any better because they don't have the understanding to say, well, no, you're going to have to really press down. And I've definitely taught 5-year-olds, like there are some kids who will get it. It takes a lot of patience, and you kind of have to see how the kid operates when it comes to that. But let's double check and see if there are any other questions here. Woo, sorry, my screen just jumped, so everything kind of like went everywhere. How long does it take for the strings to settle in, though? So when you change strings, how long does it take for them to settle?
It is an issue more with nylon strings. I have to change strings, tune it up 2 or 3 times, and let it sit overnight and tune it up another half a dozen times before it stays on nylon. On steel strings, about half of that. I can put steel strings on, tune it up 3 or 4 times, and it starts staying in tune. Once it sits overnight, it's still going to go out of tune a little, but the next day it pretty well stays in tune.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that Ron, who had the question about the side finger thing earlier, was mentioning, yes, side of the finger. So I'm assuming like if this is the string, kind of rolling of the finger. So you're playing a chord and you kind of end up on the side of your finger versus flat.
Oh, so that is different. And I will say, Ron, that's inefficient in terms of how much strength you're going to have to use to get the note to sound. I would aim towards getting the fingertip. And, you don't have to get perfect, but keep aiming towards that and practice exercises to get you there. If you have to back up, it's probably worth it. You see what's happening. Can you guys see my hand? Yeah. When you press down, you've got a lot of leverage when you press like this. You just put the guitar between there. But by rolling to the side, I would have to really strain myself to get the same amount of pressure or anything close to it. And that's going to catch up to you over time, both in terms of how much energy you're going to have to use and the habits that are going to be created with making chords. It's not that you can't do it, but it's probably worth fixing now, so that for in the future, you make your guitar playing easier.
Yeah, totally. I'm seeing lots of thank you here. Lots of thank yous. You guys are super welcome. Thanks for the welcome back. I see some of those too. And Cookie mentioned, thanks for showing it on the uke, because I know a few chords on the uke too. You're so welcome, and I'm so glad. It's such a fun instrument. And someone mentioned ukulele first for 6-year-old, maybe. Yeah. Well, actually, Chris, good question. If you have a 6-year-old who wants to play guitar, I always tell people, ukulele is not a mini guitar that grows up to be a guitar one day. It is a different instrument, a different animal. If I have a 6-year-old who wants to learn guitar, teach them guitar first, really, because the transition from guitar to ukulele is much easier than the transition from uke to guitar, because you're taking away 2 strings, and you take the same concepts of guitar and apply them to the uke. Because I can play the mess out of this ukulele, but put me on a guitar and man, I struggle.
And the fingering is totally different on ukulele, even on those 4 strings. Totally different. It is
Completely.
easy for me to pick up a ukulele and just with a chord chart figure out the fingering. But yeah, a little guitar. You can get a smaller guitar. It doesn't have to be a full size, but
Yeah.
I would say
And
the same
actually,
thing.
yeah. And actually, Chris left a comment says, yes, I'm just trying to keep him away from my acoustic. Then, yeah, get your little one a ukulele so that they can jam along with you. I'm all for it. Well, it looks like those are all the questions that we have for today. I think it's time we do a drawing before we close up.
Let's do it.
All right.
Time to give away a $50 Amazon gift card. Now, again, for those people who showed up after I started, these are people who have enrolled in my Real Guitar Success membership, and each month they complete 20 practice sessions, which are different aspects of playing guitar, scales, finger style, exercise warm-ups, chord exercises, simple songs, improvising. And at the end of the month, once they've completed, they get entered in a drawing to win a $50 Amazon gift card. We do the same thing every month, meant to be just kind of a little extra incentive and kind of fun, but of course, really, I want them to practice. Here we go. Ami, put your good luck on there.
Boom.
Got it. Okay. Wally Shannon. I see your last name. You got it, Wally. Okay,
Good
you're
job.
in. And congratulations to everybody who completed 20 sessions. Believe me, it's worth a lot more than a $50 gift card, but it's nice to have both. Okay, so if there's no last minute questions, we're going to close up for today.
I think we're good. I think we gave folks kind of a good little like last snapshot here. I don't know if anyone else. No, I think we're just about good for today.
Thank you all for joining us. It's been a pleasure. And we'll do the same thing the first Thursday of next month. We're already at May. God, can you believe we're edging through halfway through 2021 already?
Woo!
And Ami, it's great to have you back. Thanks for being
Thanks for
here with
having
us
me.
today.
Absolutely so glad I can make it. Look forward to seeing you guys next month.
And someday you'll have to show your new edition on the.
Oh yeah, I'll have to bring my little baby girl out. I'll be glad. Yeah. She would love the camera time too. She's such a ham.
Some of you probably know this already. I know Shulamit does, but she's been on maternity leave, and this is her first day back. So first time back on Real Guitar Live.
Happy to be here. Happy to share. Oh, I just want to mention too. I think Chris had mentioned. The song Layla by Eric Clapton was a really great song for chord changes. My daughter's actually named after that song. So I love the song. That's right.
Good choice. I love that song.
Cool. All right, guys.
So bye, everybody.
See you in May.
Take care.